Hi! So we're here today in Edinburgh, Scotland, staying with some of our oldest and closest friends, Lisa and Rocky, and here seeing their project that they've been working on here called Lauriston Farms. And so we wanted to get a chance to talk to Lisa about what she's been doing, how they created it, and where it's at now. So I'll introduce you to Lisa. Okay, tell us how you got started.
So I was living in Thailand until 2019, as you know, and then I came back, and two of my friends approached Edinburgh Green Space and Parks Department and said, we think you should give us that 100 acres for a food and biodiversity project. And much to our surprise and shock, they said, that's a good idea, make us a proposal. So then we presented all of that back to the council in December 2020. And they then had, they have their meetings every 3 months. So we had to wait for the right process. And then in May 2021, they approved a 25-year lease for the 100 acres. And then we had to, get planning permission and get funding, and we had a small fight with the airport. And then in December 2021, really, that's when we kind of moved onto the land. But the first thing we had to do is pay a contractor to put up deer fencing, because there's a lot of deer in that area. So anywhere where we wanted to grow crops, we had to put up deer fencing. But the way that we designed the project was we designed it because having 100 acres in a city at that time in the UK, there was nothing like this. It was the largest urban farm in the UK. Now, I think recently there's maybe one other started in Manchester, but it shouldn't be that way. Like, one of our biggest advocacy points is that a city like Edinburgh should have at least 20 farms of this size feeding the city. And this is what we keep pushing for, that's how it used to be. There used to be market gardens that fed towns and cities, and then they all got wiped out, and now we're on these big monoculture cropping systems. So it was quite unique, and we recognised that the other sort of impact of there no longer being food growing happening close to cities. It's all happening in rural areas, and it's all happening on such a massive scale that nobody really understands that is food. They just see fields of stuff. So we really wanted to, because we're in the city, we have the opportunity to bring in as many people as possible to engage with their food system. So we designed the project around 3 main themes: community, food, and biodiversity. And those 3 themes kind of apply throughout the whole farm. So whether we're growing food for sale, we're still wanting that to have community and biodiversity integral to it. But we also zoned the farm a bit that way. So we have a community zone, which is more about people growing their own food, or learning to grow their own food, or eating food that's been growing, or learning how to seed save, or introducing them to new crops that they've maybe never seen in Scotland, or just more like getting people excited about food growing. And that includes community allotments, and it includes a community orchard that the people from the community have formed a little orchard group, and they designed it, and the fruit trees will be there open for anybody to take fruit from. And then and we organise lots of events and celebrations as well to try and make it all fun and joyous. And then we also have currently we have about 20 acres that is under deer fencing that is for food production, so as in food to be produced for sale. So it's about a third, it's kind of like a third of it is given over fully just to wildlife habitat. Right. About a third of it is all kind of community-based stuff, and then about a third of it is food production.
Right. And can you explain where it is in relation to Edinburgh?
Yeah, it's in the northwest of Edinburgh, and it sits right on the coast. So you can see across the sea to another bit of Scotland that's called Fife. It's very beautiful. The 2 things that hit you most when you arrive is that it's very beautiful and very big.
And very windy.
Very windy. Yes, those 3 things then. Windy, big and beautiful.
Good job.
And it's farmland. I mean, it's been farmed for hundreds of years. So what we know, we're trying to find out the history of it, but we know that for the last maybe 50 years, it's had sheep or cows or at one point a donkey on site. So it's been grazed for that long. But we do know that within the last 100 years at least, there was grain growing happening, because one of the buildings used to be a threshing and mill building. And prior to that, we don't know what all the different land uses were. We're still finding out. But it has been I think it's been consistently been farmland for at least 600 years.
Right. And I know that there's been an incredible community response since you started. What do you attune that to? Like, how do you...
Yeah,
what do you feel like is the importance of that?
I think everybody's worried about the climate, and so there's more and more understanding of the importance of local food. There's more and more understanding of the importance of creating habitat for a diverse range of species. And there's more and more people wanting to be outside and be enjoying the experience of being outside in different ways. So, I mean, it's been overwhelming. Like, we had in the first month of starting to do something, we had 500 volunteers planting around 9,000 trees in the space of 1 month. So, and that was us just starting. We didn't know anybody yet. So, and since then we've done so many events. We have so many regular volunteers and people just, helping to plant trees, helping out in the market garden with planting or harvesting. We've got people looking after the trees. We've got people helping to build an earthen kitchen. We've got all the people so in the community allotments. So allotments means it's quite a common phenomenon in the UK where land, it's got an interesting history, but I won't go into that, but where people are given a small plot of land to grow food for their families. But in Edinburgh, there is a 10,000 person waiting list for the allotments that exist in Edinburgh.
Wow. Which
is messed up. So but also it shows the demand, like it shows you how many people are wanting to engage with food growing. Right. But in the area where we are, there aren't any allotments for several miles. And also a lot of people are living in tower blocks and don't have access to any green space or have never had opportunity to grow anything. So we knew that if we said, we've got allotments, who wants one? It'd be quite likely that we would get people who already have growing experience and even already have a garden, and they would be like, yeah, let's take it. And we thought, well, we want there to be, even for people there might be people living in tower blocks who love the idea of having an allotment, but they might not have the confidence to say, I would like that, if they've not had the experience. So we said that the allotment plots, you had to be at least 3 households sharing that plot. Because you can produce a lot of food. Our allotment size plots are big, and you can actually produce a lot of food in one allotment and share it, between 3 households. Or you're an organisation working with people in the local area. And that's worked quite well because we've managed to get quite marginalised people. So Fresh Start works with people who have been homeless or who are at risk of homelessness. And they come and they help garden. And then we've got She Scotland, who works with women in the community who are struggling with various things. And again, they bring families out to help garden. We've got Project Esperanza that works with migrant women in North Edinburgh. So they bring people from all different sorts of cultures to come and garden. So that's been really nice. And I think next year we're getting a group who are people who've been struggling with addiction, who'll get a plot and come out. So it's nice because it's actually quite diverse communities of people growing food together, and it's also about kind of creating community between them. But also it means that even though we've only got maybe 27 allotment plots going now, there's way more than 100 people benefiting from it. Right. So it's trying to use the land to maximise how many people can then have access to that growing.
Effect of that.
But at the same time, because we know that people struggle with having the confidence to start growing, we've been running 6-week courses on how to grow your own food. And quite often the outcome of that is people saying, can we get a plot? They'll see other people. Maybe they don't have friends who also want to grow, but on the course they'll meet friends and they'll be like, would you like to get a plot with me?
Right. and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
they
It's
have
really
a space
nice.
to use
I feel like
together.
I'm a matchmaker. Like you could get on. You could grow food together.
They're happening. I want to touch on like what in the state we'd call like the food desert idea that in communities that the distribution of even grocery stores and access to food is unequal. And can you touch on that and how it affects Granton and your
So I live in Granton, which in a big report was labelled as a food desert, and Granton is not a food desert. Like, we have 3 supermarkets, a Polish grocery store, a Bangladeshi grocery store, we have food grown in street corners, we have 3 orchards, we have, so we don't have it was a wrong label, but but Granton is a bit further from the farm. What's interesting about the farm is it's wedged between one of the poorest areas in Scotland and one of the wealthiest areas in Scotland. So on one side you've got people living in tower blocks, and on the other side you've got people living in mansions with huge gardens, which is interesting, right? And those communities don't necessarily come together, which is something as well, like, we're quite keen on this idea of community cohesion and creating community resilience by bringing people together. But what happens is the people in mansions, they don't need a supermarket nearby because they've all got cars. So they'll drive to the nearest supermarket, whereas the people in the tower blocks often don't have a car, and there is very little food. There's very little access to, there's a tiny little shop that's got, sweets and crisps and instant noodles in it. And they have to get the bus or walk quite far just to buy your basics. Never mind fresh, locally grown food that's actually good for your health. And there's also, like, of course, there's fast food takeaways. But, like, in terms of food that's going to nourish you and make you healthy, that doesn't exist. So we're quite keen on finding... So what we always say is we're keen on finding as many ways as possible. We know that the people from the wealthier communities, they will come because they've, read in the newspapers about how good organic food is or how important it is to be outside, and they're all very, that's fine. But in those communities who felt alienated and, not welcome, I suppose, in green spaces or don't have access to it, they're much harder to reach. And so we want to have as many ways as possible that people from those communities can come and engage with the farm in different ways, whether that's cooking a meal together, growing food together, planting a tree together, having a walk, whatever. But then we also want as many ways as possible that our food will get out into those communities. So our food we sell, at the moment we have veg boxes. So this year's our first year for doing it, so we've only got 50. But we did it as a community-supported agriculture scheme. And the way that we set it up was we said, for example, a box of veg costs, for 1 week, costs £16. But we said, if you can afford to and if you want to, pay 20% more or 50% more so that people who can't afford to pay £16 and would like to pay 20% less or 50% less can have that option. And that worked really well because we had more people signing up to pay more. And that means we could so what happened was we had 50 shares, we put out a survey and we had something like 300 people sign up. So we had to select. Okay. But that was quite good because we knew we could, most of the lower income people, we could make that offer because more people had signed up for it to pay more. So that's one of the ways we're getting produce into those communities. But the other way is that we also share excess veg with some of the community meals in the local area. And also we sell some veg in Granton next to the local bakery, which is more of an impoverished part of Edinburgh. And we're looking always to find more ways of, could we get it into community meals or whatever, bring it along. So
I think another thing that's so interesting about the project is, like, there wasn't that many of you that started it.
Yeah.
And you have 100 acres, which is a massive piece of land that hasn't been worked for however many years. It's a massive undertaking, and it still is, and you all work very, very hard. But I think what's so impacting of it is the community part of that, and that's always been a big part of it from the beginning for you, right? And so then, I mean, it's a ton of management and it's a ton of work to pull it off, but you always seem to be so open for everyone to be coming in with their ideas and working on it with you.
And it's nice because they're a huge resource. I mean, it really feels like building the earthen kitchen. I would be like, I need windows. And somebody would get on Gumtree, I found you windows. Okay, good. I need bottles. Then like tons of bottles arrive, or we need... Right now we're looking for things for rainwater harvesting, and there's quite a few people out there who are just looking for us. So just say the word, we need this, and then people are... So what's happened is, what's nice is so it's now been going for a year and a half. And over that year and a half, I think every time we have a volunteer session, about half will be people who are just regular volunteers. So you're no longer having to like teach, they kind of take ownership of stuff. And that's the best, right? Like you want that sense of, this is our project. Right. Not me saying, okay, this is our farm and we need you to help us by doing this. They just feel like it's theirs. Yeah. And that means that, they take pride in what gets done there, and they're invested in it and they love it.
And it's all the volunteers that I've talked to while we're working together, they just say it's as much for them as it is for anyone else. It's just really feeds them to be out on the land, to be working, to be with other people, people talk about community a lot. Yeah. How do you build community, right? Yeah. And I think that's something that we always did together at Pun Pun, was like, well, you work together.
You work together, done.
You do some menial work over time where you get a chance to chat.
Yeah. And here it's important to give them cups of teas and biscuits as well.
I've noticed that that's really important. That was most volunteers pointed on the biscuits at some point.
It's like really...
We have a really good variety of biscuits as well, I've noticed.
It's really bad. But it's like unhealthy food, but it's like, give them biscuits and the volunteers keep coming. It's huge. I don't even know. I mean, I think we must have thousands of volunteers every year. We are trying to track the data, but haven't counted it. But a lot, a lot. And
what would you say for people trying to get something like this started in there?
Just look out for bits of land. I think there's different strategies. I think there's so I also do other work in another part of Edinburgh close to the farm, and there local neighbours got together and was like, see that street corner, we could grow on it. And they didn't ask. Yeah. So there's that like knowing when should you, for something small, don't ask, just start growing food. Yeah. And then for something large, you probably should ask, because it'll get confusing.
Something on someone else's land.
So, but it wasn't like we were offered it, or it was up for sale or up for lease. We just saw it and said that would be amazing, and then approached the council. And because every council right now has got biodiversity targets, food growing targets, tree planting targets, community engagement, strategies for dealing with community isolation or whatever, and we tick all those boxes. And they need it, and it just means that they can go like, oh, look what we're doing, and even though they're not doing it, this is a good time actually to be approaching them for that.
Yeah, it's the same anywhere, right?
It's the same anywhere.
Kevin wants to show that they...
all the local districts will want to show that they're planting trees or growing food. So,
which is a whole nother aspect of the farm with opening that space, like you said, at the allotment for people to grow their own food. Yeah. Then also appreciating that diversity and trying to connect the stories of those foods with where they're from and their own stories. And we were talking to one of the members, and she was sharing that, the importance of food in our lives to our culture. Yeah. And when we're uprooted from our space, what that means to us. Yeah. But I feel like it's a beautiful part, not just recognizing, Scotland's history with it, but incorporating that story.
Yeah. Yeah. So and especially just now, I think when there's we have a slogan that's all seeds are migrants. Every seed has a story, because also just now there's a little bit of in some parts of this country, there's sort of some anti-migrant sentiment, and also wanting to sort of value what the contributions are that come from those communities who are very much part of Scotland and have been for so fucking long. I mean, it's ridiculous that is made out that they're not. So just trying to also highlight that. So yeah. I mean, I guess the other thing to say about the farm is that what we also want, like, we are very appreciative of the fact that it is absolutely incredible that we have 100 acres in Edinburgh. And we're also very aware of the fact that Scotland has one of the worst land ownership patterns in Europe. I don't know the exact statistic, but it's something like 400 people own 80% of Scottish land. So access to land is really, really, really hard. So we also want to welcome other land-based enterprises onto the site, as long as they have similar values to us. Like, it's not about making profit, it's about making things that are good for people, but also engaging people with that. And you know, it's much more about the sort of social health and biodiversity or whatever benefits than it is about the financial benefits. So we already have, there's a group called Grassroots Remedies started, who are fabulous. We're very excited that they're on site with us. And so they're taking about, I think, an acre, just to grow herbs for traditional remedies. And they teach, so I've done some of their courses, they make herbal remedies to sell, but they also have clinics in areas of high poverty that they also provide like herbal clinics on a sliding scale. So a bit like us, they've got the same model of like pay what you can, or saying like if you're low income, pay this much, or if you can afford to pay this, pay this. So trying to sort of create a bit of equity. And they also teach people how to make their own herbal remedies. So they're very similar minded to us. And so that works really well. And there's so many sort of synchronicities in ways that, you know, you can say this is Grassroots Remedies and this is the farm, but actually, of course, those lines are completely blurred. And then we've got a woman who's growing willow to make baskets. And again, she'll do things like, she'll say, I need some volunteers to come and weed the willow patch. And in return, I will teach them how to make a basket. So that kind of economy of sharing. And then we've already interviewed Agnes, but that's our first, what we're calling a farm start. So again, for new farmers to access any land in Scotland is almost impossible. And as a new farmer, you want to start small. You want to get the experience in a small piece of land and not, you know, get into debt for buying a big piece of land and then you fail. So we've given them, I think it's an acre to get started with. They're wanting to grow, again, they want to grow vegetables for the African and Asian markets. So really looking at varieties that can grow in Scotland that will appeal to those people looking for their cultural foods. But it means that because they're within the farm, they get all the kind of mentoring, support and experience of the rest of the team, and they have access to the resources that the farm has. So they get a lot of sort of, how to say, like, just support in this sort of early stage of farming. And then we also have a wildflower nursery. So they grow from seed different wildflowers that are really good for putting in areas when you're wanting to promote biodiversity of insects or whatever. So they've been running for a while somewhere else and their venue they can't be there anymore. So they're going to come on and they will sell wildflowers, but again also teach people and have volunteers coming to help them grow those wildflowers. And we're hoping to then get also a mushroom enterprise on site, so they'll grow mushrooms both indoors and outside. And again, like, there's so many benefits to having that on site, because the compost you can get from the material that they're using for their mushroom. And they're all about, they've decided that they're so funny, they're like, yeah, we think we're going to teach everybody in Edinburgh to grow mushrooms in their own house, and then we won't need to do it anymore. That's our goal.
When they've achieved that, then they're done.
So we're looking for that kind of thing, like that kind of attitude. Like, it's not about, we've got the best mushrooms and we're going to sell it to the top restaurant in Edinburgh. Yeah. They can do that, but at the same time, if they're wanting to, like, really address local food, sovereignty, then that's what we want. Yeah. So, but the idea is to get other enterprises happening. We're still not decided, like, for example, if we get chickens for eggs, will we do it where we're we manage it and we sell the eggs, or will we do it where we have a number of families? Let's say we get 60 chickens and we have 30 families look after them and they all get eggs from it. You know, like, we haven't decided on the model for that yet. Or we have a couple of different models in different places.
Right.
And then, the grains, so getting grains into production so that we can sell the flour. And we're also looking to see what's the best thing to grow in terms of plant protein. You know, like things that you can store in the cupboard. So like dried peas or beans. And what would be easy to scale up and then also offer that as a product for sale. So so we're still investigating our products. But if you get together with people, like, you need that community, right? So if you can get together with people, and like I say, like this, the other project in Granton, they were just like, some neighbours got together that lived near a street corner and said, why don't we grow food here? Right. So you see a space, like parks. There's people, like now, there's loads of community vegetable growing happening in, like, the meadows. So like in a park, they've just gone, why don't we just start digging this up? And then they just dig it up and start growing stuff, right? And then, you have a discussion or an argument with the local authorities. But if you can persuade them that the community wants this, needs this, and it has all this benefit, then that's your argument. And how can you argue with that? Because it's true.
And you don't need 100 acres.
You don't need 100 acres, but it's nice to have 100 acres.
If you can get it, take it.
And push for it. And like, this is the thing. I mean, that's the thing. Like, what I think we would say is, because Edinburgh does have, it has the allotments with the 10,000 people waiting list, which is ridiculous. But there is a lot of community gardens where it's more like it's not like, this is my plot and this is your plot. It's just like people growing together. And I think we have a lot of that, but the reality of that is that only feeds a small amount of people, and what we want to be pushing for. And then, because we have so many community gardens, also the government tends to go like, oh look, Edinburgh's doing food growing, they've got community gardens, but it only feeds the people that are growing. It doesn't have an impact on people's health on a big scale. So that's why we want to be saying, like, so we've got 100 acres now. That doesn't mean you're done. We need to have, where's the others? Like, we want to have, ideally there would be a community of 15 100-acre farms around Edinburgh, and we would all work out, well, our land is better for growing this. So why don't we collaborate? Like, why don't you just focus on grain, and then we can, like, set it up well, so you've actually got a decent food system happening that's feeding the city. And we have been saying that to the government and the local council quite often.
And it's completely feasible, right? Yeah.
It is, they've got land.